What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees and I rank them per year. Done such years in the past, such as 2000, 2022, and as of now, I'm focused on the 1990s, and I've done 1990, 1991, 92, 93, 94, and now you guys guessed it because you clicked on this video. This time around, I'm focusing on 1995 Academy Award Best Picture nominees and ranking them from worst to best. Now, there were 5 Best Picture nominees for this year, so I'll be ranking it from 5 being the worst to 1 being the best, and of course, my humble opinion. And I will say this, I am very curious to see your guys' ranking down below for the 1995 Academy Award Best Picture nominees. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off with number 5, we have The Postman. This is a very forgettable movie. It's not bad. It's not good. It's very middle of the road. It's fine. It's a movie. I really don't have that many more thoughts about this movie. I do know that there are some people out there that really like this movie, and I can respect that. But for me, it was just kind of like a one and done type deal. I can't really see myself revisiting this movie, and yeah, I think that of the 5, this is the one that I just liked the least, and that's why it's my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Sense and Sensibility. It is a well put together movie. I think, in particular, the costume design, production design, and makeup are just outstanding, and I also really like the acting. But it's one of those movies where I appreciate it from afar. I had a very difficult time latching onto these characters and just really caring about what was going on, not only just in terms of the characters, but also the story. The pacing also did drag for me at times, and the directing I think was fine. I do like Ang Lee as a director, but here it's one of those instances where, if you've seen some of my other videos, you know it. It's one of those instances where I appreciate the movie, I can respect it, but from afar. Don't know if I have any desire to revisit this, but it's solid, and yeah, I would say overall it is worth a watch. But there are 3 other movies of the Best Picture nominees from 1995 that I liked more, and that's why Sensibility. It's my number 4. Next up, my number 3 is Babe. So I liked Babe. I think that Babe is a very interesting kind of movie because afterwards I said to myself, I was like, wow, this movie really makes you want to go vegan. And I say that in the best way possible because you really do care about this lead character, a pig, and what's also impressive is the visual effects. They are quite good. They hold up really, really well. And I like the voice acting. I like the acting in general. James Cromwell, I think, is great. It's a very charming, family-friendly movie, whilst at the same time has stick-to-your-rib themes and messages. I can definitely see myself revisiting this movie. I actually watched it not too long ago because I was trying to watch all George Miller's films and rank them, which I did. So I'm glad that I watched this movie finally. And by George Miller, I mean, I know he didn't direct the first one, but I had to, in order to watch the second Babe, which is the one George Miller directed, I had to watch first Babe. So I'm glad that I finally checked it off the list and watched Babe because it's good. I liked it. And yeah, that's why it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2 is a movie that I hadn't seen in over a decade, so I did actually revisit it recently. And by recently, I mean as of filming this video less than a week ago. And that is my number 2. It's Apollo 13. So Apollo 13 I liked. I think that the score by James Horner is quite good. I like the visual effects. I like the acting. Tom Hanks gives, per usual, a really good performance. And I do think that it is a movie that does have some pretty thrilling scenes at times. Like, there are times where the editing matched with the music, matched with the cinematography, does make for a very compelling experience. That being said, I will say that early on it does kind of drag a bit in terms of the pacing. And I do think that there is a reason why I hadn't seen it a second time for almost, for a decade or so, I would say. And that's because I just feel like the rewatchability value just really isn't there for this movie. It's well put together for sure, but it's just not a movie that I overall loved. Like, the reason why I have it over Babe, like in terms of ranking, is because I do think that in terms of importance, I do think that people need to experience Apollo 13 at least once, just like Babe, but even more so because I do think that this is something that many people aren't really aware about, and those that are, I think, should experience Apollo 13, especially with how immersive it can be at times. So I like the Apollo 13 overall, but again, I do think the rewatchability value does hamper as well as the pacing. But overall, it's well put together, and yeah, that's why it's my number two. Next up, my number one. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just gonna say right off the bat, my number one, two, and three. They're at times interchangeable in that if you were to tell me, it's similar to when Dances with Wolves won Best Picture. Was like Dances with Wolves versus Goodfellas. It's like it changes on the daily, and I feel like 1995 is very similar in that. But as of the filming of this video, my number one is Braveheart. So Braveheart, I liked. I do think though it has, ironically enough, similar issues to Apollo 13 in that it takes a little bit to get going. The pacing is an issue. It's got bumpy direction early on, but when it finds its footing, it is quite an experience. I mean, Braveheart is something that is really good, especially from a filmmaking perspective. By the time you reach, I think the second act is probably, I would say, the strongest act. When it finds its footing in that second act, it's really, really good. James Horner, who also did the score for Apollo 13, did an incredible job with the score in this film. Great cinematography, great production design, very well acted too. I will say that I wasn't a big fan of the romance. I do think that does hamper the film a bit, but it does have a memorable ending. And despite it being one of the most historically inaccurate films ever made, I do think that overall I can see why it won Best Picture. But like I also said earlier, I think that when I watched this, I think it was like a second time or a third time, I noticed the flaws, and I do think that this is a rock solid film similar to Apollo 13 and Babe. I see the flaws, but I also do think that there's a lot of entertainment value with this, so I understand why it won Best Picture. But if someone were to have this, like, you know, as their number three or number four, I would totally get that. I would. I do think that in terms of Best Picture, I do think this was a weak slot of nominees. Like 1995 was the same year that we got something like Seven or Heat. I get it that those are genre films, but still, it begs the question of like, hey, come on, like I think, or even The Usual Suspects. It's like movies like those I think should have got nominated over some of these others, but alas, here we are. I think that overall it was a solid batch of movies, but just not something where it's like, oh wow, 1995, what a year for Best Picture nominees. So overall, solid batch of movies. But you guys, I know I'm rambling at this point. Let me know your ranking of the 1995 Academy Award Best Picture nominees down below. I'm very curious to see if you have Braveheart as your number one, or if you're more of an Apollo 13 or even Babe kind of person, or maybe subvert my expectations and you have The Postman as your number one. Very curious to see your guys' ranking down below. And guys, as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.